Today, we are going to be talking about making sure our RVs are ready to go on our summer adventures. Now, there's nothing worse than being stuck on the side of the road or getting to a campground and something not work. And so there's a few things that we can do to make sure that everything is operating the best it can be. Now then, I've got an interview with Rich Luhr, who is the co-owner of the Air Gear Store, as well as a publisher of Airstream Life magazine. Now, what we're going to be talking about is 99% RV centric. There are a few things we're going to be talking about that are Airstream only. However, most everything applies to all RVs, travel trailers, fifth wheels, or even motorhomes. Now then, let's jump over and talk to Rich and see exactly how we can make sure our camping adventures are trouble-free. All right, here we are with Rich Luhr, and Rich owns, co-owner of the Air Gear Store, as well as the publisher of Airstream Life magazine. We've had a few conversations, Rich, but I thought today would be a great time to talk to you because I really watch your videos. I learned how to run my Airstream, my RV, through a lot of what you do. And so I thought it'd be a perfect time to get on with you. And let's talk about what we need to do to make sure our RV is in great working condition as summer's here. It's time to RV. So first of all, Rich, how you doing, buddy?
I'm great. I wish I was actually out RVing a little bit more than I am right now, but it's June in Tucson. It's just scorching hot. So this is our off season. But
yeah. So anyway, yeah, I got the Airstream out the other day. I finally did my Lithionics upgrade. I put my Lithionics 302 Boss in it, which is a new battery Lithionics came out with. I'm testing it. Fantastic battery, 305 amp hours. So wow. It's working like a dream. So yeah. We need to talk about what do we need to check? What do we need to look at to make sure that we don't hit any valleys in our RVing? So why don't we first start off with, like, what do you do whenever you break your RV out and ready to go?
Yeah. Now I make the assumption that first trip of the year, you've winterized, or, at least you've been in storage for a long period of time, maybe months. And it may have been months since the last time you looked at the RV. And that's actually kind of a problem. I really, most of the time I'll just say, I tell people, go check your vehicle while it's in storage, over the winter or whatever. But let's just assume that you haven't had a chance to do that, or it's been some time. And it's been sitting there. So if it's been sitting there, that's when the bad stuff happens. So you really want to be checking through basically all the systems, and it doesn't have to take long. What I tell people to do is, first thing you do is just go in the front door, the entry door, and smell. So do you smell anything weird, like rodents, dead food, water leaks, anything punky smelling? Look for signs of water leaks, any problems from the snow over the winter, problems from anything that's obvious. The next most important thing is to check all the systems before you go on your first trip. Just because they worked when you put it away for the winter doesn't mean they're going to work when you take it out of storage after sitting there for a number of months. And so it's really easy. If you've got electrical power and propane, turn on all the gas appliances: stove, furnace, water heater. Turn on the fans, turn on the refrigerator. If you've got 30 amp, even turn on the microwave and the air conditioner. Basically just check everything to make sure it's all still functioning the way you expect it to. No surprises. Oh, and the water pump, big one. That's one of the most common problems, because sometimes if you don't properly winterize, a little bit of water gets into that pump and freezes over the winter, and the result is a dead pump when you come back. And that even happens when you have it professionally winterized. I hear that story all the time. So that's the first thing I do, Brandon. It's just good inspection, run all the appliances.
Yeah, because I found that out with my furnace. And so, we took it out in May. We went up to Breckenridge, and it was still 28, 29 at night, right? Mm-hmm. And our furnace was not working. The blower would come on, no heat, no nothing, right? And fortunately, I found a YouTube video that told me something to check. So I checked, and it was some dog hair had gotten on the sail switch.
Oh.
So my question to that is in your experience, and if you don't know what a sail switch is, it's for people watching this, it's the little contact that tells the furnace to come on, basically. So fan runs, the switch connects, and it says turn on heat. So is there anything that I could have done other than going outside, taking my furnace apart? Or is there any kind of maintenance I need to do on that furnace?
Yeah, well, furnaces are pretty maintenance free. I mean, if it's very old, you want to inspect it for rust or anything that might cause a leak in the heat exchanger, but that's not something that's going to happen in the first several years of use. The more common thing is to go to the outside, take off the vent panel, and check to see that the blower, the exhaust outlet, and any components that you can see from the outside, there's no spider webs, no wasp nests, anything like that, leaves, maybe junk that blew in over the winter. Who knows what it might be? Anything that's in there needs to be cleaned out. That whole area should be nice and sparkly clean. That's where most of the problems come from. It's just contamination from the outside. Now, the case of your sales switch, who knows why it went bad? I mean, maybe you just got a bad one. I don't know. But that's why I say turn on all the appliances. So that's the second thing. Is just by testing it before you left on your trip, you could have avoided getting out to Breckenridge and being freezing cold.
It was cold. It was really cold. Yeah.
Yeah. Just, and that's the thing. Stuff breaks in storage. It just happens. I mean, now sometimes you can't maintain your way out of it. You just got to do a good test in the spring and find out that everything's okay.
Okay, so let's start off with, furnaces. It's either going to work or it's not. Hopefully, your cell switch is. But I did learn a little trick with it. Is because so what happened is dog hair got on mine. It wasn't allowing the contact to go. And what happens is the intake for the furnace is on the floor right under my couch, and I've got 3 dogs. Dog hair inevitably gets sucked into that thing, right? So that's what I'm going to start doing before any winter or anytime I need the furnace, which, it's not a lot that we need the furnace, but occasionally when you do. So I'm just going to open that up. I'm going to blow out that cell switch area and go from there. But what I want to talk about, and I've been searching online and I cannot find this, and I'm hoping that is and I even read in the Globetrotter manual, and there's nothing really about this. Do I need to be greasing my tongue jack?
No, generally no. The gears inside the modern power hitch jacks are permanently lubricated. If you can get access to them, it won't hurt to put in some really nice high quality silicone grease, the clear stuff. But it's generally the hitch jack manufacturers don't seem to feel like it's a routine piece of maintenance. So no. The funny thing with those hitch jacks is they tend to fail for other reasons before they need maintenance. It's kind of a reverse thing. Normally, you don't maintain it, it fails early. In the case of the tongue jacks, I find more problems happen with them regardless of maintenance. They just fail and you end up getting another one. It's unfortunate, but it's kind of the state of the industry quality sometimes. The post that slides up and down, it wouldn't hurt to put some lubricant on it, maybe a little bit of silicone spray or a light grease, but it's not something that I've ever seen manufactured.
Okay, because I've had mine for this is our second year on our Airstream, and I had never performed any maintenance on that. And I was thinking the other day when I was lifting it up, I'm like, surely there's a grease cert or something in here I need to be doing, but apparently not then.
No, probably not. No.
Okay,
could vary by manufacturer, but I've never seen one.
Okay, so a couple of nights ago, in my search of trying to figure this whole tongue jack out, I stumbled across your video about I think it's 9 things you need to lubricate, which is an excellent video. So I immediately ordered the T9, I believe you said.
The Bofield T9?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And everything like that, because I did notice one of my doors starting to squeak, or my only door is starting to squeak. And so what do you suggest? Kind of recap on that video. What all do we need to be lubricating before we head out?
Right. There's a number of things, especially if it's the first trip of the year. Your best friends are silicone spray, and I like the Bofield T9 for certain applications. Those are the 2 main ones. In addition to those lubricants, you might want some white lithium grease, and you might need some heavy hitch grease, or just heavy grease with a squeezed gun. So basically, you want to lubricate everything that moves that can be lubricated. The door hinges are an obvious one. Silicone spray works great, but it tends to, if there's rain, it tends to create these black streaks, which are not great. Bofield works better there because it leaves a waxy film that holds into the hinge a little bit better, and it doesn't leave a mark when it gets wet. the folding steps at the entryway, window latches, um, let's see, stabilizer jacks. If they're squeaking, silicone spray is a good thing on that. Just get under there and really make sure you get every moving part of that thing. We've got, like I said, we've got that video with the 9 things that we listed. I think one of the other things was the awning itself. If you have a manual awning, usually just lots of silicone spray where all the tubes meet and slide, or where there's any moving part. If you have a power zip-D awning, like they're putting on a lot of new Airstreams these days, there's a little tiny hole in the support arm, very small, that you're supposed to spray some white lithium grease into. And then just run the thing up and down a couple of times to make sure the grease is distributed. And the hitch. The hitch, if you have a ball, traditional sort of ball type hitch, lube the ball with a heavy grease or with a dedicated hitch grease, and follow the instructions of the manufacturer of your hitch on lubricating the other parts. For example, a Hensley hitch has Zerk fittings. You need a grease gun that has to be lubricated frequently, like every 500 to 1,000 miles of travel. Other types of hitches have different lube points and different types of grease, but usually it's a heavy grease that goes into those things. So those are some of the main ones.
So that's good to know. And so just so everybody knows, I mean, everybody generally has a can of WD-40, but you don't want to use WD-40, correct?
WD-40 is not lube. It's a different product. And the problem is if you use WD-40, it's not going to last. It's going to stop squeaking for a little while, and then the next day or a few days later, it's not lube. It's designed to dry up. Now there is a WD-40 brand of silicone spray. That's a different product. Silicone spray is great. Very, very useful in RVs. But the straight WD-40, no, don't use it.
Yeah, and plus it's pretty nasty. Like it'll get all that grease and grime accumulated. So okay, so that's a perfect thing to do, because there are a lot of moving parts, and a lot of what we're talking about is Airstream, but this is generally 99% RV related. So no matter what type of RV you have. All right, let's talk about tires, axles, and different things like that. So on ours, we have a dual axle, right? Is there anything on the axle I need to be looking at? Anything that we need to lubricate or anything on the axle?
No, your axle is maintenance free. There's actually nothing you can touch in there. It doesn't have any lube points. Nope, don't even need to worry about the axle ever. Well, I shouldn't say ever. After about 20 years, the rubber cords inside that torsion axle will start to stiffen up, and then you'll probably replace the axle.
Okay, big and then if you've gotten a lift on your Airstream, then a lot of people have probably noticed if they have any damage on that. Is there anything? I remember when I got mine was during the middle of that Dexter recall. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And so, in fact, my Airstream got delayed. It got delivered to the dealership, but I couldn't get it because Dexter had these washers that were breaking and tires were flying off of them. And so I think they've got them all fixed. I don't think it's an issue anymore. It was just a certain allotment of axles they were doing. So basically you're saying I don't really need to worry about the axles at all then.
No, but you do need to think about your tires and your brakes and sometimes your wheel bearings. So those are all things. The most common problems that I run into, tires have to be like right up there at the top 3. People don't pay enough attention to their tires until they fail or something bad happens. And really just basic tire inspection is so easy to learn how to do, and so easy to do on any kind of RV. And I've got a video on the Air Gear website about tire inspection. It's also on our YouTube channel. But basically, it's just a matter of getting down there and looking closely at the tire. Okay, does it have cracks? Does it have damage? Is there anything stuck in it? How does it look? Because you can visually inspect a tire very, very well, and you can check the depth of the tread. You can look to see if the tread's wearing unevenly, like there's a spot that's bare and there's a spot that's not bare. These are all warning signs that you can look for. Anyone can do it. And that's a really basic thing. Wheel bearings, on the other hand, you can't really inspect them until you take the whole wheel off, which is more of a mechanic job. That's not something the average person's going to do, because you got to jack the rig up, take the wheel off, and then know what you're looking at. But you can do it based on age, and basically say if those wheel bearings haven't been looked at on a travel trailer in 2 or 3 years, they probably should be inspected. And certainly you can see, if you see grease coming out on the wheel, big black streaks of grease coming out on the wheel, that's a warning sign that your wheel bearings the seals may be leaking grease. And that's definitely a clue that you need to inspect them as well.
So
So those
where
are,
does it need to be an Airstream dealer that look or an RV dealer to look at that, or can a tire shop kind of figure that out?
tire shops generally don't do the bearings. They just kind of do tires. But any decent mechanic that works, an automotive mechanic, can do a wheel bearing. They're all
Okay.
pretty similar. So that's not something you need an Airstream dealer for specifically.
Okay. So one of the very first things I did whenever I purchased my Airstream is I went on the Air Gear store and I bought the tire kit. Okay.
Yes.
Which I think you putting that together was absolutely perfect because it was everything that you're going to need. It was going to be a torque wrench, which is an extremely important thing, especially in your first 100 miles. You got to check the torque on your lug nuts, but also the exact tools that you need to change the tire and everything. And so, what should we be doing as far as checking the torque? I know it's like every 25 miles after you change the tire. Give us that exact again.
Okay, well, it's not a totally exact thing, but there's a rule of thumb. If the wheel has been removed, then you put it back on. You have to check those lug nuts. I say at 25 miles after the wheel's been put on is a good rule of thumb. Maybe 50 miles and 75 miles. Or I do 25, 50, and 100. It doesn't have to be exact. The point is that when you put that wheel back on, those lug nuts don't seat tightly the first time. And as you roll down the road, they can wiggle a little bit loose. And so by tightening them 3 times, you make sure that they're completely set to the proper torque.
Mm-hmm.
This is where the torque wrench comes in. As you mentioned, you got to have a torque wrench. Because, for example, on an Airstream with an aluminum wheel, which almost all the trailers have these days, they need to be torqued to between 100 and 110 foot-pounds torque. You can't do that by feel. You have to have a torque wrench. And if you do that those 3 times, then the wheel will be properly torqued, and then you don't have to check it again. Some people are like, oh, I check my torque every day before I tow. No, that's completely unnecessary.
Okay.
They're not going to come loose after that. So do it every time the wheel's removed, and then you don't have to worry about it until the wheel's removed again.
Okay, so that's perfect. So whenever you're about to take it out, it's been in storage, you really don't need to check the torque. You just really got to inspect the tires, air pressure. If you got a TPMS, make sure all of those are working correctly. And I just changed the batteries in my TPMS nodules. So I did check that.
Sensors.
Yeah, the sensors.
So the sensors, those batteries generally only last about 1.5 years. So it wouldn't be a bad, sort of springtime maintenance item just to say, let's just proactively replace the batteries in all 4 sensors, or how many sensors you have, every spring. There's just button cell batteries. They're cheap and you can do it yourself. So.
Yeah, it was very simple. So I switched all those out to 5-10 minutes, and it was done. And if you don't have a TPMS, boy, I really suggest doing one so that you can know if something's about to happen. So anyway, okay, let's get into plumbing. Now then, you already gave us a huge tip on test your water pump, which I have not done. And I had water in when I was saying it was in the 29, 30 degree range, and my cell switch went out. So my tanks and everything were not protected. And so I have not tested my water pump. So I need to do that.
That is you're absolutely right. There is a danger that some water got in there. And if it freezes inside the water pump will be irreparable. You'll just have to swap out the water pump. But here's the thing. People don't sanitize the plumbing in their RVs as often as they should. It's one of the most neglected maintenance items, and it's so crucial because you're ingesting that water. Even if you drink bottled water, you're brushing your teeth with it, maybe you're cooking with it, maybe you give it to the dog, maybe you inhale some in the shower. Don't kid yourself. You're still drinking that water one way or another. And if it's got a bacterial infection of some type, that's going to make you sick. And people don't do this often enough. You really should sanitize the system at least annually, and I would suggest seasonally if you camp in 3 seasons. It's not that hard to do. It just involves some bleach and a few basic things. We have a guide on the Air Gear website for free download, which shows exactly the steps to go through and the tools that you need to sanitize the plumbing. And you really need to do that. And in the process of doing that, you'll test the water pump. So it kind of automatically gets done. So it's a good thing. And then at the same time, if you have a water filter, an external water filter, or one that's built into the kitchen faucet or under the sink, it's time to replace that. It should be replaced every 6 months at the outside. Some people only do it annually. I do it every 3 months. But yes, do the filter too.
Yeah, and so I use the exterior filter that I got from the air store, which is a fantastic filter. And so I have not replaced that yet. So I need to I need to jump on and purchase the new filters for that.
Yeah. We sell the filter replacement pack, of course, a 2-pack or a 3-pack, depending on which filter that you bought. And I keep a spare set in my Airstream so that if I'm out traveling and the water flow starts to drop down because the filter's clogged, or something tastes funny, or it's just been too long, I can do that swap right there in the campground. It takes 5 minutes to do it, So
yeah,
yes, spare filters.
So what's the best way? Because I stored my water filter, just keep it. Actually, I keep everything in the garage, that I carry with it, but I did not unscrew it and didn't take the filter out. So I'm assuming I left that water filter in there all winter long, with probably there was still some water in it. So at that point, what do you suggest on storing that? Should I take all of that apart
Yes.
before? Okay, I didn't do that, so I need to just throw that water filter away then.
Don't feel bad. I made the same mistake my first winter as well. First of all, if it was allowed to freeze, the filter's trash, so it's got to go because the freezing will break this filter, and it will no longer filter down to 0.2 microns or whatever that level is. The second thing is, though, even if it didn't freeze, if it's been sitting there with water in it for months, there's a possibility that something grew in there. So I did the same thing in the spring. I was like, it still tastes okay, but now that I think about it, so the correct thing for long-term storage is to unscrew the canisters and pour the water out, and then let the whole thing dry. And if it's dry, you can then store it indefinitely. It's going to be fine.
Okay.
But
I didn't do that, so you'll be seeing an order come in for some new filters. Okay, so we've discussed a lot of things, tires, we've talked about plumbing and sanitize, things like that. Now then, propane. We use propane. I'm not a fan. I wish I had an all-electric coach, but I don't, and so I have to use propane. And so I did have a time where my propane regulator went out. Is there anything that I can do to prevent that, or is that just something you just figure it out when your propane is not flowing?
Sadly, there really isn't any preventive maintenance related to the propane regulator. There's almost nothing serviceable inside it. There's basically an adjustment screw, and that's it, which you normally wouldn't mess with. So propane regulators going out is one of those things that just seems to happen, and you never know why. You never know when. I had one on my Globetrotter. The dealership did a pre-delivery inspection, said it was fine. I took delivery. It was dead. Just like that. No propane flowing. So the basic symptom is you don't have gas. And there's gas in the tanks and the valves are on, and it's probably the regulator. Fortunately, it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, I do suggest we carry an extra one now. I was not carrying an extra one. I carried an extra one in my leisure travel van. Never had a problem with that in 3 years. Airstream first year, it went out. But I found that most everywhere, hardware stores, the Tractor Supplies, those guys, they generally will carry an RV propane regulator. They're about $80-$90.
Yeah, probably. I haven't looked lately, but they are amazingly easy to find, and you can buy them on Amazon and have it shipped to you next day.
Yes, and like me, I've got an extra one now, in one of my storage bays. So if it does happen, that I will do it. So anything on the tanks? I mean, with Airstream, we have I have two 30-gallon or 30-pound tanks, basically. Those are pretty much lifelong, right? Is there a time where those tanks are no longer viable?
Well, they have to be re-inspected, and I can't remember if the interval is 10 or 12 years. It's in a blog I wrote, and it's in my book. But there's a date stamped on the collar of the tank of the date it was manufactured, and it's either, like I said, 10 or 12 years from that point. Propane companies are no longer supposed to fill it for you past that date. They don't always check. They're supposed to check. They don't always check, but you will have to have the tank inspected. It doesn't mean the tank is bad. It's just required inspection. They'll take the valve off. They'll look at the tank. And they're looking for obvious things like the valve is leaking or there's rust or it's damaged, something like that. But for the most part, those tanks will last a lifetime if they're properly treated. So not much to worry about there. The bigger issue is those propane hoses, the short black pigtails that go from the tank to the regulator. Those are the failure point. If you can just look at them and you'll see the black sheathing on the outside starting to crack. That's just from age or heat or UV if they're exposed. The cracking doesn't mean they're leaking. It's just a warning sign that the hose is getting old. That black sheath you see on the outside isn't the part that holds the propane in. There's an inner lining in there that holds the propane in. So you're just looking cosmetically at it and going, well, it's starting to look pretty bad. Maybe I should replace these. And if you think maybe you should, you should.
Oh, yeah.
So that's an easy one. The other thing is the soapy water inspection. Do you know how to do that one?
Yes. Yeah. So go ahead and explain it, though.
Okay, so you get a little spray bottle, and we sell one in a little kit we make called Maintenance Essentials Kit, but there's a little plastic spray bottle. You put a few drops of soap in there, dish soap, and you fill the rest with water, give it a shake. Then you spritz that on all of the connectors where the one piece of the hose connects to the regulator and so on. Any piece that's connection, you spritz it on there, but make sure the gas is on, and you look for bubbles. And if you see bubbles forming, you have a leak. It's that easy. Anyone can do it. And so I always carry a bottle of soapy water solution in my kit. I just always have it. If I ever smell propane, just start spritzing connections and see if I've got a leak somewhere. So that's
yeah. So it'd be a good idea if you do change out your regulator, just go ahead and change the hoses out too.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's,
those don't last very long. I mean, 3 years or so on a hose is kind of a good life as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. That's good to know. All right. So now a lot of people, and you don't want this to happen while you're driving down the road, is for your 7-pin hitch or 7-pin connector to come loose, and you lose trailer brakes, you lose, signal lights, all of those things. How often should we be putting that electrical grease on our 7-pin hitch or a 7-pin connector?
Yeah. Okay. Well, the 7-way connector is a real trouble spot because it gets exposed to the weather a lot, and the pins get corrosion on them. So they start to, instead of being shiny brass colored, they're green or black or brown. They start getting discolored, and then you get electrical problems where suddenly your brakes don't work or your trailer lights don't work. That's because the electricity is being blocked by that corrosion. It's definitely a regular maintenance. And this one you need to do a lot. Like I would say several times a season. Take a look at that connector, the 7-way connector coming from the trailer, and make sure that those pins are clean. And if not clean, they need to be cleaned. And you can do that with a simple burnishing tool and some deoxit, which we sell this as a kit. But you can find it in other places. Deoxit helps you take the corrosion off. And the burnishing tool is like a little nail file, and it scrubs the corrosion off. And you kind of do that. It takes about 5 minutes to do it. And then you won't have any problem with electrical dropouts. And then the grease you're referring to is dielectric grease. Dielectric grease doesn't improve the connection. It actually inhibits electrical connections. It's an insulator. But what it does is it prevents the corrosion from forming again because it puts a thin layer, it's like petroleum jelly. Put a little thin layer on the connections, and where they're exposed to the weather, they won't corrode as quickly. So what happens is when you slide the connectors together, the dielectric grease will get pushed away from where the pins are connecting, and they'll connect just fine. But the dielectric grease will stay in the other places and keep them from getting more corroded. So dielectric grease is a preventative. It helps prevent corrosion over a long period of time, but it doesn't do any cleaning by itself.
Got it. But we should still be putting it on there then.
Yeah, a thin layer, just a little bit. Doesn't take much.
Okay. Does that come in your maintenance kit as well?
Yeah, that all comes in the maintenance kit. Yeah, we have dielectric grease, the burnishing tool, the deoxit, we have instructions, and there's a bunch of other things in that kit as well. It's called Maintenance Essentials Kit. And it's one of those things that I just, I found myself always having to do the same things over and over again, maintenance-wise on the Airstream. So I just put there's 22 different things in this little bag that just all the things that you're commonly going to need and are hard to find at hardware stores.
Well, I think it's great because, like me, I'm not somebody who, I'm not the kind of guy that's going to go out and do normal maintenance and know exactly what I'm going to need, right? And so for you to put this kit together, same thing with the tire thing. I never would have thought to get a torque, wrench, right? I would have just used the the thing and done it until I couldn't do it anymore. So I think it's a fantastic that you offer these kits. And so, and it's not just for Airstreams. I mean, this is going to be
Our tire
for
changing
anybody.
kit will work on pretty much any trailer. It's got
Yeah.
4 different sizes of sockets in it, so it doesn't really matter what brand you have.
Yeah. So I know we're talking about Airstreams, but it'll work on just basically any RV is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. So now then, we're talking about the maintenance kit. So essential items that we want to restock. We carry a first aid kit, for example. I carry the tire changing kit. Maintenance kit is something I do not have that, but I do need to get it. So I'll be ordering that soon. What else do we need to be carrying? What tools do you carry that you think are absolutely essential?
Well, tools can really get in there. I carry a fabric tool bag from Sears that it's not very big. It's a little bigger than my laptop. And in that, I can carry everything I need to keep my Airstream maintained on the road. So it's not like you have to have 100 tools. And you certainly don't need to have a socket set. There's very few sockets on a travel trailer, except maybe on the hitch parts. And you do need a couple of open-end wrenches to work on the propane, but not a lot on the heavy hardware. Most of the stuff I travel with is along the lines of tapes. I have several different types of tapes that I use. Small tools, hand tools, pliers, wrenches, snippers. It just depends on how deep you want to get into your own maintenance. What I usually recommend to people is start with a couple things that you've needed in the past, and then gradually augment your toolkit with the things that you find you need as you go. Like, for example, if you're going to carry around a spare propane regulator, you need a couple of wrenches to take those hoses on and off and properly tighten them. You know this. So obviously you need 2 or 3 wrenches. If you're going to get into electrical work, you might need a wire stripper. You might want some fuses, a fuse puller. I've got a whole list of recommended things in blogs that I've done and videos that I've done. It really gets way beyond what we're talking about here, but you can certainly carry a whole truck bed full of tools. But I will say you don't need to. For most travel trailers,
Yeah,
the number of tools you need, it isn't that big.
because I did when we first started RV, and I put the socket set in there.
Yeah.
I put it in there. Don't need
And
it.
then you didn't use it, right?
Nope. And then, they're just like you said, there's a couple of little wrenches that you might need to change propane out or something like that. But yeah, just that quickly left. But I just, make sure you got screwdrivers. And if you have a Canadian RV, just make sure you've got the Robertson drivers and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now then, we talked about the furnace and everything, making sure that's up. If it's summer, you're probably not going to need your furnace. However, you are going to need your air conditioner.
Mm-hmm.
What do we need to be doing to make sure our air conditioner won't fail us when we need it most?
Yeah, that's a big one. Well, it depends on how comfortable you are with getting up on the roof. Certainly, from the inside, you can access the filters that are right there, usually in the ceiling or in the air conditioner where it sticks down, and you can take those filters out and clean them. That's easy. By the way, the easiest way to clean a filter is don't get it wet. People think you're supposed to wash them. Use a dry paper towel and just rub it real quickly on the filter, and the dust comes right off most of the time. So that's the easiest way to clean the filters.
Well, I've been wetting mine, so no more now.
It takes forever if you wet them. I used to do that too, but the dry paper towel trick is the way to go. So that's from the inside. And there's not much else you can do from the inside. The rest of the maintenance happens on the roof, which means somebody's got to get up there. You've got to take the shroud off, the white plastic shroud or black plastic shroud that's covering the air conditioner. And then you've got to look at it. And there's several things you can do while you're up there. You can clean the coils and the heat exchange, I forgot what they call this, but basically the fins of the thing. You can clean the fins by vacuuming them or brushing them with a brush or using a fin comb, which is kind of a special device that straightens out the fins. You can inspect for things like stink bugs. I was up in Virginia many years ago, and they had stink bugs, and I had no idea they infested the air conditioner. And I was shedding stink bugs for months after that. So all kinds of insects can get in there and cause problems. But the thing is, to do this maintenance, you do have to get on the roof. And especially on an Airstream where the roof is curved and it's aluminum, it can be quite dangerous. So I don't recommend most people think about getting on the roof. It's really something you want to be very, very careful about because it's easy to fall off. So easy to fall off. If you have a flat roof on an RV, it's a whole nother story. You got a ladder probably up the back, and then it's dead easy to get up on the roof. So it's just sort of your level of risk and what kind of rig you have. But if you do want to go up there and take that shroud off, you'll see if it needs cleaning. And that's probably the next big thing that you can do to help your air conditioner work well.
And if you are on your roof of your Airstream, make sure you go on and you walk on the rivets.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you'll not going to be happy with yourself if you don't walk on the ribs.
You can dent the roof. I will tell you, I've been on the roof of my Airstream probably 20 times, and I have never managed to dent the roof, and I have walked off the rivets, but then I only weigh about 155 pounds. So your mileage may vary.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to test that because I weigh a little bit more than that. Okay, so batteries. Now, like I said, I just put in my lithium system, which is pretty maintenance free. However, some people are going to have lead acid still. So lead acid batteries, even AGM batteries, what do we need to do to make sure that those are charging correctly, that our charging profiles are set, all of those different things to make sure that we don't ever run out of 12-volt juice, because that whole trailer runs on it. You won't have any lights, your trailer jack won't work, nothing will work basically.
Yeah, your fridge won't work. Even some propane appliances won't work. Everything's dead when you don't have battery power. It's the worst thing that can happen, really. Well, here's the thing. The number one problem I hear about after winter storage is dead batteries. And the problem usually stems from what happened over the winter and during other periods of storage, because people store the RV, and even though they flip the battery disconnect switch, which takes most of the loads off the battery, there's still usually a trickle of something pulling power out of the battery. And if the RV isn't plugged in, or those batteries aren't on battery tenders, they're going to go dead. And that's just the nature of lead acid batteries. They're going to go dead. And they'll go dead surprisingly quickly, like, maybe 3-4 weeks. That's it. And then the more, it's just like leaving the lights on in your car. If you keep letting that happen to your lead acid batteries, they're going to not work in the spring when it comes time. And what's going to happen is everything's going to seem fine until the moment you unplug, and then a few minutes later or an hour later, you're going to have no battery power. So the best thing you can do is make sure you keep those batteries charged while you're in storage. That is number one. If you don't do anything else, just do that. Now, if you have done that and you've kept the batteries charged, then the two thing is to inspect where the batteries go in, make sure that the connections are all clean, there's no weird buildup growing on them, that their batteries, the cases aren't cracked, they aren't swollen. Swollen batteries or cracked cases, immediate replacement, totally unsafe. Make sure the batteries aren't getting hot when they're charging. That's another sign that they're dead. And if you suspect the battery,
like the case is getting hot, or like the post, or what is basically the whole thing?
The whole thing. Yeah. If the battery's heating up when it's trying to charge, it's bad. It's definitely not what it should be doing. And usually that'll be in combination with some swelling in the case. That's a really abused battery. I've had it happen because I brought my Airstream in for service, and they let the battery die, and then the dealership let the battery die, and then I let the battery die, and then after that, the cases started to swell and the batteries got hot, and they wouldn't get charged, and they were unsafe. So those are the things that you can do with those batteries. But like I said, number one, keep them charged. That's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, and so if you're at a storage like my storage, I have a plug, and I just keep it plugged in all winter.
And I do the same thing. I mean, storage with power, that's the best. If whether you have it at your house or at a storage place. If at my previous storage place, there was no power, and that's why I switched. I mean, it cost me a lot more to store where there's power, but when you figure the cost of replacing those batteries every season, it's not really an increase in cost at all.
And if you don't have power, I mean, one thing that you could do, you could just say unhook the batteries, correct, to where they're not draining.
Lead acid batteries have an interesting capability of self-discharging. So by taking the negative cable off the batteries, yes, they won't have any loads on them anymore, but they'll still go dead gradually anyway. You'll get a few months and they'll go dead. They really need to be put on tenders.
I got you.
I'm not talking about a battery charger. I'm talking about a battery maintainer, which is a slightly different thing. And you can buy these inexpensively at auto parts stores, $50 or so. Take them out of the Airstream and put them on these tenders and these battery maintainers, and they'll be fine. If you, that's the best solution if you don't have power and storage.
Yeah. Now, what about AGM? AGM are supposed to be maintenance free. You don't have to add water to them. Is it basically the same situation as far
It
as the
is.
discharge?
Yeah, they're still lead acid batteries. They're just a different type of lead acid battery. So yes, they will self-discharge just like the regular lead acid batteries will do. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, check your voltage before you head out on a trip because you do not want to be out there without your essential items such as your refrigerator and everything.
Number one problem I hear about, by the way. Number one.
Oh, I bet. So, what about say when I say check the voltage? I carry a voltmeter with me. I'm assuming you do. Um, what should we be looking at? Lead acid is what we should be looking at. They should be like 12.8 charged.
12.6, 12.7, 12.8. I'd be satisfied with anything in that range.
Yeah.
If it's once it's fully charged. If it's, the funny thing is that battery can show a lot less voltage and still your lights will come on, your fridge will work. You might think, oh, everything's fine. It says 11.9 volts, but it's fine. It's not fine. What that's telling you is that battery's not going to take a full charge and it's going to go dead very quickly. So you really want to see at least 12.6 volts when it's fully charged and preferably a little bit higher.
And if you see less than that, I would just say go replace them, correct?
Before you spend the money, I would take it to the auto parts store and say, can you check this battery for me? They'll do a free test.
Okay.
But 95% of the time, they're going to say, yeah, it needs replaced.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, lead acids aren't terribly expensive, but it still is expensive. I'm a proponent of lithium just because they are there's so much more battery volume you get in the same footprint and everything. So if you can upgrade, yeah, if you can upgrade to lithium, definitely do it because you'll have a lot less problems generally. And a whole lot more power. But again, phantom drain is still a thing on those guys as well. But a lot of them have on-off switches. Yeah, a lot of them have on-off switches and Bluetooth, so you don't have to hook up a volt. You can just hook up your Bluetooth and see what's going on. Well, you can hook up the Bluetooth on a lead acid or AGM if you use a smart shunt. So I would suggest getting a smart shunt as well, so you can see.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah, so you can see what's going on with your batteries as you head out. Okay, I saw a nightmare on Facebook forum. I forgot which one of the forums it was. It might have been Airstream, but somebody burned up their power cord.
Ooh.
What do we need to be doing to make sure those connections? Now, mine has a smart plug. It's supposed to not do that, but I've seen smart plugs that have burned. But I mean, same thing. You just really got to clean off the connections, right? Is that what we need to be doing?
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. I've seen smart plugs that have melted as well. Smart plug is not a panacea. It's a much better product and I recommend it. We don't sell smart plug, but I definitely like it as a product. I have it on my trailer. But I will say that it's not a guarantee. You got to keep those connections clean and they should be shiny. They should be shiny brass all the time. And if they're not, one of those pins is going to overheat and you're going to melt that plug. And the thing about smart plug is it's really expensive to replace. If you have a 50 amp smart plug cord and that cord gets damaged and you have to replace it, it's about $400 just for the cord. So,
my 50 amp cord is the bane of my existence. My leader travel van was a 30 amp, and that cord is just a oversized extension cord, basically, right? It's not heavy. My 50 amp smart plug cord. Oh my gosh! I mean, it's a wrestling match every time you deal with it. So I was going to find a 30 amp dog bone or whatever situation where I could just carry a 30 amp because that's we usually I've got soft stars. I could run both air conditioners off 30 amp if I absolutely had to, but generally we run them one air conditioner at a time anyway.
Yeah.
It was going to cost like $250 to get just the head for the smart plug to make a dog bone out of it.
Yeah.
And so I didn't do it. Yeah. Smart plug's expensive.
It is. It's a good product, but you don't want to be buying replacement parts. They really kill you. So
no, and I'm surprised there's not more stolen cords and things because they're so expensive. But
don't put that out there.
Forget I said that.
Edit that out, please. Yeah, I mean, I think people don't realize how valuable those cords are.
Yeah,
those they'll steal the generator or something like that. Oh my God, they're just, Now the 30 amp cord, which is what I have, is not that expensive, but I think it's still in the $150 to $200 range for that cord. So it's still a chunk.
No, I think the 30 amps like 250.
Ooh, really?
Yeah. The 50 amp, I'm almost certain is almost $500, if not at 500.
Yeah.
For the replacement. So, it's not fun. But I was sure wanting to find something where I could use a 30 amp cord, when I didn't need my 50 amp. Because most of the time we don't need the 50 amp. But
that's a product that needs to be developed. I'll put some thought into that one, because that's
I would appreciate it. Yeah, because I would use that all day long. I'd put my 50 amp somewhere far away that if I needed it, I had it. But yeah, typically I do not need, and we only have 50 amp because we have 2 air conditioners. Otherwise it'd be a 30 amp rig. So totally doable. Anything else you can think of, Rich? I've kept you long enough. I appreciate all of this time you've given us.
Just one more thing. I just want to remind everybody that for beginning of the season, you want to go around. You already mentioned the first aid kit, the 9-volt batteries in the smoke and carbon monoxide alarms.
Yep.
So it should be replaced every season. Check your fire extinguisher. People don't look at this. The fire extinguisher has a finite life, and it'll pack down. The powder will pack down over time, and it won't come out. There's an expiration date somewhere on your fire extinguisher, or if it's been 10 years since you bought your RV, just get rid of it and either get a new one, or we like the Element fire extinguisher. It's a totally different style, and it doesn't expire. But that's one that people forget a lot. First aid kit, your RV probably didn't come with a first aid kit, but you, Brandon, very smartly have one, and we do too. And it's full of expired Band-Aids that don't stick anymore, so that needs to be checked.
Right.
We talked about the tire changing cord things. I think that's kind of the top things. I would also suggest to people who have the tire changing kit that they consider a 12-volt compressor or a 120-volt compressor if they have an inverter. But a compressor that they can use to reinflate their tires on the road, because there's never air pressure around when you need it. And I think that's about it for the sort of the top line things that can help keep you out of trouble.
So from what I get from everything, and every time we take off, I'm just like, I am looking at everything because I do not want to be stopping on the side of the road trying to figure something out, or I don't want to get to a campground and something not work. And so do a walkthrough, check all of these things. And just constantly maintain.
Yeah, and maybe before you go off on that big 2-week trip, you go on a 1-night trip just to shake it all down every season. Make sure no funny surprises happening.
In fact, I do. We've got a campground just literally 5 minutes from my office here that I do that. I go and I buy a 1 night at the thing. I hook up my hoses. I make sure everything's running correct, my electrical, everything. And so, that I've, knock on wood, I've not had anything go wrong, but if I'd rather find out right there than when I'm 700 miles from home.
Absolutely. I'm totally with you on that one. Preparedness is my byword for sure when RVing, because you know what? Something will go wrong. And
Absolutely.
It's great to be able to take care of it yourself, and have it be minimal. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Rich, I appreciate it. Now then, if you want these products that we're talking about, Rich has he's got some awesome products on the Air Gear store. I'll leave a link to that down below. Also, Rich is the publisher of Airstream Life magazine, which is an awesome magazine. And in fact, I think it was a couple months ago, you opened it up and, hey, there was my shining face and Janet's and Rusty's. And so, we made Airstream Life magazine. So that was fun. So.
You can retire now. That's
I know. I'm famous. And so anyway, it's an awesome magazine. So if you're an Airstreamer, definitely check that out. And I think I got a free year when I bought my Airstream, but then now I renew because it's fantastic. It comes in digital and both, and we still get the print. I like the print. So I still like the idea of real magazines. Internet's fine and everything, but I love that. So be sure to check all of that out, and those links will be down below. But Rich, thanks a million, and we'll get on again soon and talk about other things, because you have a amazing, vast knowledge, and I learn something new every time I talk to you.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I'd love to do it again. This is always fun, and I love to help people learn and stay out of trouble and have a good time. So this is great.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rich.